everyone. This is Tiffany again. This is part 2 of my testimony. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust the camera. So I just wanted to touch back with everyone and keep explaining to you what happened to me back in 2012. So as I was saying, I had basically, according to these paranormal investigators, is what they like to call themselves, they said that I had been psychically opened through this acupuncture treatment, and it really freaked me out. I was having a lot of paranormal activity. I knew it was paranormal at that point, especially after I talked to these people about the situation. I had come to terms with the fact that I still hadn't really acknowledged that it was the devil, but I at least acknowledged that it was definitely some type of spiritual warfare. During this time period, when I was still staying at my parents', I had gone to bed, and when I woke up the next day and I turned on my cell phone, there was a picture of me on my phone that I did not take, that nobody in my household took, of me lying there sleeping, and right in front of me was a neon green type face, and it really freaked me out. When I went to bed sometime that week, before or after that, or actually, I'm sorry, it was shortly after the acupuncture treatment, I saw a neon green light manifest above me on my ceiling, and it would move around the room, and it got bigger, and it looked like this big, huge opening above me on my ceiling of light, but it was like a green color, and in the center, it looked like a person with a cape on. It was really, really creepy. It was just like a shadow with a person with a black cape right above me, and it would move around the room and turn into a small neon green dot on my wall and ceiling. Then I went to the cemetery, took the pictures, then I came home, and I'm pretty sure that when I was at the cemetery, I just made it like 1,000 times worse. Again, I still didn't know anything about the devil. I still wasn't saved. I still didn't know who God or Jesus was. I didn't know them personally. I never, had any intimacy with them like I do now as a saved person. But, so continuing on, my dad and I were not I was fighting a lot with my parents, arguing a lot, because they wanted me to go back to nursing school. I even tried to get back in, and the nursing school welcomed me back, but I was not able to mentally focus, and I definitely physically did not need to be there. I was extremely physically oppressed. I was waking up with bruises and scratches on my body at this point. Lots of deep, long red welts all over my arms and legs. I was missing big patches of hair on my head. The bones in my face looked like they were moving. My face looked very distorted. I had gained several pounds of weight in a very short period of time, like 10 dress sizes in 2 weeks. That's medically impossible unless you have a serious medical issue, which I did not. So I was really, truly I think I was just in a perpetual state of shock. I don't think reality had set in yet because it was so surreal. So because my family and I were arguing, I wouldn't go back to school, and I wouldn't get up and get a job, and I wouldn't move out. My dad finally just gave me money to move out. He gave me a lump sum. He gave me a check to go get an apartment, which I did. The paranormal activity just continued. I went to a Catholic church looking for help, and it was weird because when I approached the church, it looked like there was this homeless person sitting on the steps talking to themselves. You know how sometimes homeless people do have schizophrenia, and I thought, oh, that might just be a crazy homeless person talking to themselves. And as soon as I tried to talk to the person, I think I was trying to ask the person, do you know if the parish or the priest of this church is available? And as soon as I turned my head, that person just vanished. I mean, it was like I was hallucinating. So I still kind of thought maybe I am crazy. There's just so much to the whole story. I'm trying to piecemeal it back together. So anyways, I went into this Catholic church, and they had a candlelight vigil set up where you could actually light a candle in someone's honor. And I went over there and I lit a candle, and I couldn't find the priest of the church. He wasn't there because I just wanted to talk to him about getting some help. And when I came home from that visitation, on my phone was another video that came up that I did not take, recording myself walking through the church, and above me were different looking faces in different colors, really creepy looking faces too. So, again, I'm still not very knowledgeable about the devil. I didn't even really know he was real. I was very ignorant, but I continued to look for help. So I took that check my dad gave me, I cashed it, I got an apartment, and the spiritual warfare continued at this apartment complex. I met a lady who said she was a witch, and she was. She had a pentagram on the wall in her apartment. She had all these long, real huge knives on her counter, just laid out, like 4 or 5 of them. And she had a big huge bowl filled with crystals and different kinds of rocks, and she gave me a few of them and said they were for protection. When I put them in my pocket, they would disappear, and then they would reappear like in my other pocket, or they would just disappear out of my hand. I thought, this cannot be happening. This is so strange. We were talking though, because we both have dogs, and usually when you have a dog, you talk to a lot of people you normally would not talk to. And I was just crossing her front door when she called out to me, and we started talking about our puppies. And she invited me into her apartment, and I just started to tell her what was going on. I saw that she was very spiritual. I didn't know she was a witch till I saw the pentagram until she told me. But I told her that I thought it was the acupuncturist who had done this to me. And she said, well, I can help you if you come over tonight. We'll both sit inside a circle and write that person's name on a bay leaf. And we'll burn a candle, and I'll put the bay leaf in my cauldron. She actually had a cauldron. I did not know that witches actually use cauldrons. I thought that was just something from a fairy tale, So the next day, or sometime that week, I woke up with a big ball of hard dried wax on my silk pajama pants, the pants of my silk pajamas. So that freaked me out. I don't know how people get into witchcraft or why they do it, but I know sometimes they're indoctrinated. It's generational. At the time, I didn't know anything about that stuff, but I continue to seek spiritual help. I finally did find a tiny little Pentecostal church around the corner from where I live, and the youth pastor there baptized me, and he came over to my apartment and prayed because I was having a lot of demonic activity. I would hear footsteps around me at night when I was sleeping. I would see all kinds of shadows. My stuff would just randomly disappear, like my personal items. And they did try to help me, but I didn't really feel a connection with that church. I didn't feel like it was quite for me. It was very, very country, like super country. And I just was like, okay, they're really nice here, but this is not for me. So because the apartment complex I moved into was so nasty, I wasn't in my right mind when I picked it out. In fact, I hadn't even looked at it. I just signed the lease just to get away from everybody and get away from my parents. Because I complained so much about how substandard it was, subpar it was, they let me break my lease. And I ended up moving to a nicer part of town, to a nicer apartment community. And I was at the dog park one day, and this really nice lady was out there with her dog, and we were talking about spiritual things, and it turns out that she goes to this church, and she invited me. She gave me this free CD that they have that they give out. And I went to that church, which is when I realized that God had actually predestined me to go to that particular church, because the pastor of the church reminded me of this play that I had seen when I was like 13, 14 years old. And it was about Huckleberry Finn, and it was called Big River. And there was a little song that they would sing about how Huckleberry Finn would never get to heaven because he wouldn't learn to read, and he wouldn't learn to write, and he would never read his Bible, so he'll never get to heaven because he won't know how. I mean, it was some type of like ditty like that, some kind of catchy lyrics. I'm not going to sing it because it's embarrassing, but during this Broadway play that I'd seen many years before, my dad took me to this play, and I felt very convicted, like every time they would talk about, if you don't read your Bible, Huckleberry Finn, you're not going to know how to get into heaven. I felt very convicted in my heart, and I didn't know that's what I was feeling. I thought, I didn't know what to think. I was very unsaved. I was very lost. I was not renewed at all in my mind. But I just had a very sinking feeling in my stomach, like I just felt bad. Well, years later, when I found this church, after all this happened, I believe that the pastor of my church, he's from Mississippi, just like Huckleberry Finn. They have a lot in common. He grew up kind of poor and uneducated, just like Huckleberry Finn, but now he's a highly anointed pastor. And when I first went to the church that night, it sounded just like, everything he was very prophetic. Everything he was saying seemed to line up with exactly what I was going through. And I thought that was really strange because I'd never been around somebody prophesying to me. So I kept going back to that church because I feel like that was planned a long time ago. See, whenever the devil has plans for you and you're predestined to be with God in eternity, God's always like several steps ahead of the devil. If you really are truly going to turn your heart over to God and get saved and want to be with God, he's always several steps ahead of the devil. So he had this plan for me, I think, for me to go to this particular church where I still live and still go, to get information about how the enemy works, how he's very crafty, how to get my body healed. This pastor I go to now, he has a heavy healing anointing, and I've had several miracles in my body since then. A lot of the weight has come off, almost all of it. My hair has come back supernaturally. The bones in my face are being restored. I've had a ton of deliverance, but not to get too far ahead of myself, going back to this time period, I was still very distraught, even though I found this wonderful pastor. And I wouldn't always be able to sit through the whole service. I didn't really understand what he was talking about when he would get into the Word, when he would get into the Bible. I'm like, what is he talking about, But soon I learned that God was a healer and that I could get my body healed. And I found this inner healing ministry where they cast spirits out of people through another local ministry way out of town, and I still go there too. So when I went to that ministry for inner healing, again, I'm going to like 2 different ministries right now. My main one that I go to, my home church, and then I have to go to one out of town once a month. I still go there almost 4 years later. I made an appointment, a prayer appointment, with these 2 older ladies, the elders of the church, who are very experienced with casting spirits off of lands and out of people. And I didn't know what to expect. I went to this tiny little chapel somewhere off the interstate, and they had me do what's called a soak, which is where they just play some really relaxing, tranquil music, and they prayed over me. I told them what was going on. And I think it was like a night or 2 later, I believe that I was caught up in the spirit. I believe that my spirit I think the natural laws of my body were suspended. And I think that my spirit was out of my body, and I saw a door open, and there was a beam of light coming out of it, and I saw feet, and I saw the border of an asymmetrical gown. And the next thing I saw was myself healed, like in the spirit. I saw some of the weight coming off. And that was my first miracle. And when I came to, I went into the bathroom. Some of the weight had started to come off after these 2 ladies prayed for my deliverance. And I looked as white as a sheet, I was so, from head to toe, I had literally no color in my body. That's why I think God had suspended the natural laws of my body and taken my spirit up to, I don't really know what that vision meant, or it wasn't a vision. I think I was caught up. It was an encounter with the Lord. But so when the weight started coming off, that's when I started getting more interested in getting my body healed. And I did have a few miracles. I was getting like a lot of cuts on the bottoms of my feet too. I forgot to tell you. I was getting a lot of cuts.